my whole life. Just seemed like it was alcoholics and addicts. And so you learn certain ways to behave when you live with people who are alcoholics or addicts. Codependency, walking on eggshells, all the things. And you have to unlearn those things, right? And you learn those things because those people and their behavior are so controlling, and so because they feel so out of control all the time, so they try and control everything they can, and that means the people around them as well.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Truth That Heals podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Anthony Hernandez, and our guest today is the Innovator, a disruptor, and an inspirer. She's also the CEO and founder of SheisMe Global, and they have events that is called SheisMe Conference. Our guest today is also championing women's voices and driving for change. I proudly welcome the guest today, Lisa Jimenez. Lisa, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. And to really just get started, I've already opened up about the work that you do as the CEO and founder of She Is Me Global. Can you tell us a bit about the philosophy, or just tell us what is She Is Me Global for the audience?
Yeah, She Is Me Global is a global organization where we strive to raise women's voices. So we want to make sure that every woman is heard and that no woman ever feels alone. That's a problem that women feel a lot of shame and judgment around things, everything from being widowed to being in a domestic violence situation, and we're trying to end that. We bring women together from all over the world so we can tell each other our stories and, feel some sisterhood in that and have a safe place to speak up and speak out.
And for you to start this, was there a moment or an event, an experience that sparked this idea?
There was. So I grew up in a Mexican household. I didn't have any brothers. It was just us girls. And my dad was sort of the king, right? And we didn't really have a voice. What he said went, and you listened, and that's the way it was. And yes, I know you and I spoke about having a grandmother who was super strong and independent. And yeah, my grandfather died when I was very young, and my grandmother never remarried because she said, no man's going to tell me what to do, kind of thing. Luckily, I had that role model, but I didn't listen until I was much older because we're taught to get married and have kids and do all those things. Especially if you grew up in the Catholic Church, you have your sacraments and you have all the other stuff you have to deal with. And so you do. You listen, you behave. But because of that, I married into a familiar setting and then experienced domestic violence. And once I got out of that situation, I really wanted to tell my story so that I could help other women. But the problem was the only place to really make an impact or tell enough people was on the internet. And when you're out there saying things on the internet, oftentimes you get attacked. And if you've been through that trauma, you don't want to go through it again from people that you don't even know. People are out there saying the worst things to you on the internet. So I spent 40 years in high tech, working in Silicon Valley and other places. So I had the technology experience, I had the marketing experience, I had the event experience, the product management experience, all the things that needed to create this. And one morning I just woke up and I thought, because I had been looking for a place to tell my story. And at the time, podcasts were people had podcasts, but there wasn't a lot being talked about that was sort of taboo, right? And nobody really wants to hear driving in their car on the way to work about some woman's domestic violence situation, right? except for other women, but it's not something that is really out there. So um, I decided to create this platform, which started as the She Is Me conference. And that brought women together in a safe space, just women, so that we could tell each other our stories and sort of come together in solidarity.
So thank you for sharing about, your life experience and also that vulnerability, because putting yourself out there after a toxic relationship and then going onto social media to connect, there are a lot of people who try to silence and try to take away one's voice,
Hmm.
but here you are still pushing forward. Uh, Now let's just go back for a moment because you
Sure.
were talking about being in a very dark and toxic relationship. I don't know all
Hmm.
the details, but
Hmm.
maybe women in the audience or someone who's been in a relationship may resonate with that. Uh,
Yes.
and for you, you were saying that there wasn't really a way to connect, at least maybe at that time,
Well,
correct?
there's not a way it's not something that you walk around and say, I'm in an abusive relationship or my husband hits me or, does the things that he does. You don't tell anybody that. So there's this big, you're living in this bubble of shame. And then there's just the shame you grow up with and being, a Catholic Mexican girl. Like you grow up like just everything is, shameful. Like you can't wear that, you can't say that, you can't do right. So you're like constantly bombarded with shame. And so it's something that nobody talks. I mean, luckily now we're talking about it more and more, but at the time, we weren't 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we weren't going around and saying, yeah, my husband hit me. Wasn't something that was talked about. So I wanted to create a space that we could talk about it because when you talk about healing, one of the things that heals us is releasing those secrets, right? Because as long as we hold on to those secrets, we're keeping that poison inside of our body. And that really makes us sick. And it manifested itself in my physical body through a couple of different autoimmune diseases, to the point where I was literally debilitated. Like I couldn't even walk up a set of stairs. Um, uh, I couldn't get out of bed sometimes. The pain in my body was so intense, with fibromyalgia and rheumatoid arthritis. I just, I couldn't do anything. And so in finding someone who taught me about that mind body connection and knowing that holding on to my secrets and my trauma was really causing the sickness or the illness in my body. I'm learning how to release that. And part of that is speaking it and letting it out. That is a phenomenal plus to what I wasn't even thinking about when I built I was really thinking about let's all come together in a safe space and tell each other our stories so we don't feel alone. We don't feel like I'm the only one this has ever happened to, right? But with the part of it that we are actually able to speak it and release it and heal ourselves by telling our stories, that's so much more than I ever expected.
And so, for you to, I'm not sure what happened. If you did you leave the relationship? Did he pass? I don't
I
know.
wish he would have passed, honestly. No, 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 no. I had asked for a divorce. It was escalating to the point where the kids were begging me to leave, and it got to a point, and the most dangerous time for a woman is when she wants to leave, or when she does leave. And so I was as brave as I could be, and at one point, it was right after Christmas, in 2007, 2008, and he was screaming at me and said, "What do you want, a divorce?" And I said, "Yes." I finally had the courage to say yes because I'd been thinking about it and I had been planning it, but I didn't know how I was going to get out. Right. And I had my own money. Luckily, I had a good job and I made my own money and we owned our own business as well. But he pretty much had socked that money away. He didn't really share any of that, even though we both had built it. And that's another thing that happens in abusive relationships is financial abuse. And it's very, very it's just a way to control the partner, right? But luckily I had a good job and I made my own money, but it was more about safety, getting out and being safe than it was whether or not I had money. Luckily. But I had asked for a divorce and he completely flipped out. He moved into, we had an office in our house and he moved into the office, didn't want to look at me, that kind of thing. And then a couple of weeks went by and I came home. I had taken my son to go spend the night at his friend's house. And they were small at the time. They're all grown up now. But I'd taken him to spend the night and I came home and my daughter was crying and she said, Daddy's saying terrible things. And he had been saying, your mom hates me, all this stuff. And and over the next 2 hours, he had trapped me in the house and tried to kill me. So I had been, I'd thrown through a window, my fingers were broken, um, I was chased with a knife and stabbed. My earrings were pulled out of my ears, all of these things trying to just kill me so I wouldn't leave. So I couldn't leave. I did one of those one of those football moves, where you fake them out, like you go one way and then the other way. And I jumped over the back of the couch and I ran out the door. And luckily, I had gotten into I had a Prius and I just had a key fob, so I didn't need my key. And I, had my daughter in the car with me and we took off. He chased us. And I had, during that time we were in the house, I had pressed a speed dial on my phone before he broke it, and um, I called my mom and said, "Mom, he's trying to kill me. You've got to call the police." And she called 911 in her city, and then they dispatched to my city, which was, different parts of California at the time. And once he caught us at the end of the street, and he was trying to break the windows to get in at us. The cops came around the corner and he was arrested. So he went to jail for a week or so, and then he got let out. And there was a restraining order, but he didn't pay any attention to it. He came to the house whenever he felt like it. And he got 50% custody of the kids. And by the time the trial came around, he had been charged with felony attempted murder and spousal abuse. By the time the trial came around, it had been reduced to a misdemeanor, and he got a $258 fine, a 6-week pickup trash on the side of the freeway on Saturday punishment, the orange jumpsuit kind of thing on the side of the freeway. And then he had to go to an anger management class. And
That
that was it.
that doesn't sound fair to me
Not fair.
because
No,
he was almost there to take your life. You wouldn't
he was there to
have
save my life. Yes.
if he would have done that. I mean, you wouldn't have. And just $258 fine.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And we went to family court prior to criminal court. We went to family court within like 3 weeks of the event. And we were told, or I was told, I could not mention the abuse. I could not mention the incident in family court. So I couldn't tell them that had been arrested. I couldn't tell them that he tried to kill me. I couldn't tell them anything. All we could do was say we were getting a divorce and it was irreconcilable differences. And then they awarded him 50% custody. So, yeah.
Well, I
And this
usually
happens on a daily basis, by the way. So there are plenty of women out there who will hear this and say, yes, I've been through that. And yes, I know. And this is what's happened to me because it happens on a daily basis. The court systems do not protect women.
well, I don't want to go away from your story.
Oh,
However, this really reminds me of a story that I saw recently in California. I think in San Bernardino. It happened, I
Hmm.
believe, in September. I'm not sure if you're aware, but there was this couple where supposedly their child was kidnapped. But now that they've done some more research, it turns out that the father was in a previous relationship and he beat the child. The child is now, I think, is not living a wholesome life. Is
Hmm.
really this father almost took the child's life.
Yeah.
What happened? He was given anger management and released. Nothing was done. He was let go. And just yesterday or Friday, the date today for those, right now, today is October 18th. So maybe on
Hmm.
the 16th of October, he finally pled guilty to taking this child's life. But all of this perhaps could have been prevented if instead of giving a slap on the wrist, instead of just giving him a little anger management, these people, abusers, are kept behind bars. And that's probably what should
Agree.
happen
Agree.
more
Um,
often.
I agree. Yeah, without a doubt. There are so many offenders out there, not only of physical violence, but sexual violence, against children, against women, and they are let go with a slap on the wrist. I mean, we saw this with the kid from Stanford, right? That raped the woman behind the trash can, and she was unconscious. And they were like, "Oh, we don't want to ruin his life." I mean, there has to be consequences for behavior that is not acceptable in society, right? There needs to be consequences. And I mean, how many people are in prison right now because they sold marijuana when it was illegal and they're still in prison,
Mhm.
right? And now marijuana is legal and they're not out. They're still serving time for something that's now legal. Yet, if you go on the sex offender registry and look at where you live and see how many sex offenders live around you, it will scare the living daylights out of you. And none of those people are locked up. None of those people, they're all out there, either working in churches or working in a police force or working, somewhere. Like you see it every single day. Um, and I just saw a story the other day. I think it was People Magazine had published a story about a woman who had murdered her husband, and it was like in India. And she had chopped off his penis. That's it. She was done. She chopped off his penis and then she murdered him. Um, and all the women were commenting like, what did he do to her before she got to that point? She's not just a psycho killer. Like something pushed her to that, right? And they're making such a big deal out of it. But every single day in this country, women are attacked and hurt and maimed and disfigured and killed by someone that they know, and nothing is done. I mean, one out of 500 people, offenders, get jail time. It's very, very sad and very scary.
And you said something that I have to go back to you about this case in India,
Hmm.
how they're making a big case, or they're making a people are making. I'm guessing online, people are making a
Hmm.
big deal of her removing his penis.
Hmm.
Okay, but at the same time, uh, is there ever a big deal to the abuse that was inflicted upon her? Was that ever?
Never even discussed. Never even discussed about, I mean, and she had probably, I don't know, I didn't go into her case, but I've seen it so many times. And she probably had reported it. She probably, the police didn't do anything about it. And especially in some countries where, you know, what men do is just what men do.
And I'm not trying to justify
Yeah.
uh, killing. That's not how I go. That's not how I fly.
Hmm.
Uh, but when there's a big deal on something like this, and it's just not her case. There are a lot of women who probably find the power to fight back or to speak up, and they get put down. There's a big deal against them, but there is sometimes, many times, not a big deal on the abuse that is inflicted upon them. And so now going
Right.
back to your story, um, how did it feel for you? Or let me rephrase that. How was it for you after you left that relationship? How did you rebuild?
Uh, well, so when you grew up like I did, you grew up in a very much a traumatic way where there's a lot of alcoholism and there's a lot of violence and there's a lot of things. You kind of just do it. And that's the trauma response, right? It's kind of like you just push it aside and you go forward and you just push it aside and you go forward. And no matter what had happened the day before, you don't talk about it. You just the next day, and you probably have seen this in your life too, like, a drunk uncle or something at a party does something really bad. And then the next day, nobody talks about it. It's like, oh, that just happened. And that's just how he is. And that's just it. So you just kind of move on. It took me about well, it took me a couple of weeks of just being in shock after it happened, where I was just kind of going through the motions. And there were some things that I don't really remember where my daughter was like, "Oh, mom, you had to do this or you had to do that." And I really don't remember because I was just doing what I needed to get done, like going to family court and getting the restraining order done and those kinds of things. In fact, I was just thinking about that last night, how I was sitting there shaking as I was writing out everything that happened to me and trying to remember the order of events, because I was in so much shock. But after that, he left me with a we had bought a house um 6 months before all of this happened. And he left me with the house. He didn't pay for anything else. It was this huge mortgage. So I ended up not being able to, like, if I had paid the mortgage, I wouldn't be able to eat, wouldn't be able to feed my kids kind of thing, because we both had good incomes and so we bought a nice house. And he just left it there to me. We had a boat, and he decided to sell it to one of his friends for $1,000 so that I wouldn't get any money for it. Yeah, there was a lot of things that went on like that. So I had to find a rental, move my kids out of the house we bought. The house had to go back to the bank because I couldn't pay for it. And then we just kind of, went about our as normal as we could be. But again, the kids had to go with them every other weekend, and it was always such a big deal, and they didn't want to go. And eventually, they just said, "We're not going," and they stopped going. And then he wouldn't he wouldn't sign the divorce papers for the longest time. And that was just another control thing, right? And then so one day he called me and he said, "Oh, I'm ready to sign the papers." And it was almost 2 years later. And I said, "Oh, you must have met someone." And of course, that was the answer. He met someone and he could let me go now and he could, go with her, and that was fine. And they've had some rocky times. In fact, she called in early in their relationship, she would call me and say, "He's doing this. What do I do?" Like,
Yeah.
I'm not your counselor, but I didn't want to, like, I felt bad. I didn't want to leave her. I didn't want her to get hurt. But again, that was her choice. So I would help her. I would, tell her this is what he's doing and he's trying to control you or he's trying to control the situation or whatever. I don't know if they're still married, and I haven't seen or heard anything about them in probably 15 years. I don't know, um, but yeah, how did I rebuild? I just did. It's just one day at a time. That's it, one day at a time.
And you mentioned earlier, I think you were saying that you were writing down the things that happened and that your body was shaking.
Hmm.
What for those who are maybe listening and maybe they're shaking right now? Did you have any tools or did you have any exercises that helped you get through these difficult times?
One tool that I've used for many, many years is the emotional scale. And I don't know if you know anything about that, but it's really your emotions and what's low vibration, what's high vibration, right? So joy and love are the highest vibration, and hopelessness or jealousy or powerlessness is like the lowest vibration. So if you can find that anywhere online, you can find the emotional scale, and learn how to, and I teach this class sometimes. I haven't taught it in a while, but I used to teach it, but learn how to work your way up that emotional scale to really deal with your emotions. Because one of the things that happens when trauma gets trapped in our body, it's because we don't process our emotions, right? We don't step through them. And the easiest way to get through something is just to feel it, just to deal with it. And so I practiced that a lot. The trauma that stayed trapped in my body, um, that manifested itself, physically, was trauma from forever, right? That I dealt with my whole life since childhood. Um, but if you can learn to navigate that emotional scale, you can pretty much work your way through anything. And it's really just every level you get to, you want to feel jealousy, you want to feel revenge, you want to feel boredom, like, oh, I'm so bored of even thinking about this anymore. When you get there, you're back in the positive. So that's a good thing. And the best thing about it is once you've gotten past that particular level on any one thing, so let's say I'm just processing this violent situation that happened, right? And I get to the boredom part. Well, I'm never ever going to fall back down below that boredom. I'm never going to go back to powerlessness. I'm never going to feel powerless over that situation ever, ever again, because I've worked through that emotion and I've worked my way up out of those negative emotions about it. I'm never going to go back down. I'm only going to go up about it. So that's why I can talk about those things now. It doesn't affect me. I don't shake anymore. I don't, and I've told my story hundreds of times. um, it's just, it's something that anyone could learn to do. It's a great tool to get you through just about anything that you're feeling. Like somebody cuts you off in traffic and you get really mad and you come home and you're just like, "Ugh," you know, um, you look at that emotional scale and you go, okay, where am I right now on this scale? Right? Am I angry? Do I feel powerless? What is that thing? Anger. The other thing to remember is anger feels better than powerless. Okay. So a lot of times when somebody gets angry at you and they're fighting you or they're mad, they're screaming, even someone cuts you off in traffic or you're in the grocery store and someone, Karen's yelling at you, right? Um, she's feeling powerless over some situation. She can't control you, so she feels powerless. She can't control how you look, how you act, how you talk. If you're speaking Spanish, right? And somebody's like, don't speak Spanish, you're in America, right? You get that from these crazy women. Um, it's because they feel powerless over the fact that they can't control you. And so they get mad because getting mad feels better than being powerless. And they don't even know that they aren't even aware that this is how they're feeling, but you can be, right?
Mhm.
So you can be aware that if they're then saying those things to you and they're yelling at you, you're like, oh, you're just feeling powerless over this situation. So you're taking it out on me. Go ahead, go be done. You don't have to get mad. You don't have to take it. You don't have to absorb it. You don't have to play into it. And sometimes it's hard. And then when you get mad back, it's because you're feeling powerless that you can't get your point across, or you can't defend yourself, or you can't make her understand that we're all the same. And speaking two languages is actually better than only speaking one,
Mhm. Yeah.
like there are lots of things that you can't make them understand, right? So if you can work your way through that emotional skill, I think that they think that is, if I could recommend any tool, that's what I would say to do.
Well, thank you for sharing that tool. I think it's a very
Hmm.
beautiful tool that I'm also going to have to do some research on.
Yeah,
I'm always learning on this podcast with all the guests. And there are some people out there who can really make us feel small and make us feel like we are not
right.
empowered, that we don't have a voice. And there are also people out there who, a friend told me, there are people who are, she calls it, uh, energy vampires. Like, what's an energy
Yeah.
vampire? It's like they take away your energy. And maybe there are relationships like that, or coworker, or whatever. But here we
Hmm.
have you. You've already shared with us that toxic, abusive relationship, how your body was shaking. But now we see somebody who isn't shaking, but is speaking with conviction and also with grace. And just, you're saying what you need to say, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually a beautiful thing where you can just speak and be yourself, and also helping others
Hmm.
to raise their energy as well. So my next question for you is, how did uh, how did this become not just a concept, but how did this become a reality? The She Is Me Global. What was the story behind its starting?
Well, again, after all of that, and I wanted to heal, and I wanted to be able to tell my story because I'd been in some rooms. I decided I would join Al-Anon, which is really for people who live with alcoholism or addiction, um, and grew up, with alcoholism, and then married into alcoholism. It was just my whole life just seemed like it was alcoholics and addicts. And so you learn certain ways to behave when you live with people who are alcoholics or addicts. Codependency, walking on eggshells, all the things. And you have to unlearn those things, right? And you learn those things because those people and their behavior are so controlling, and so because they feel so out of control all the time. So they try and control everything they can. And that means the people around them as well. So I started speaking in Al-Anon rooms, up in front of people in the meetings, right, sharing my stories, and I really wanted to make a bigger impact. That's always been my goal: is how can I make a bigger impact? And so one morning, and I told you I have all this experience in technology and business and everything else. So one morning I woke up because I had been looking for conferences or speaking gigs, like where could I go and speak? And nobody, there were plenty of business conferences for women. There were plenty of places for me to go and say, how to build your business or how to build a product or whatever. But there was nowhere for me to tell my story and how to thrive after abuse. And so I woke up one morning and I thought, why don't I just build this myself? I know how to do it. I've done it for Microsoft. I've done it for sales. I've done it for big companies all over. Why don't I just do it myself? And so within a week, I had built the website. I had gotten the name. I had created a logo. I had called some friends and said, hey, do you want to speak? You want to put this conference together with me and speak? And within about, I don't know, 2 months, we had, 28 or 30 women who were ready to tell their stories. And they weren't all stories about abuse. Some of them were, my husband suddenly died and I was left with 4 kids, or I got hit by a car and lost my leg, or, I mean, there were all kinds of stories, but it was, how can I tell my story so that some other woman out there might hear it and know that she's not alone and that she's not, whatever she's going through, we've been through it, and she knows that there's another side. She'll get there, right? Even if she's in the midst of whatever it is right now. So that was our first conference, and then we've had, smaller events throughout. We would have a healers event, and we'd have a cancer event. We'd have a small business event. We'd have an event for domestic violence victims, just, specifically. And it's just grown from there. So this year's our sixth conference. We have 75 speakers this year. It's next week. Um, and we have workshops, we have speakers, we have panels where we all talk about, specific things specific to women. Um, we this year we're talking about financial independence. We're talking about Project 2025 and Project Esther, which are changing, how women can even live in this country. We're talking about violence against women on one of the panels because there's a rise in violence against women right now. Um, and just leadership, like reimagining leadership. What does that look like going forward? Because obviously, leadership is not working. The patriarchal leadership is not working in this country and in many other countries. So we're like, how can we balance out the energy? How can we balance out um, what laws there are? How can women, really have sovereignty in their lives? How can we have control over our own bodies? How can we make decisions? How can we make laws that protect us? Um, and punish perpetrators, right? Like there's lots of things that need to change,
Mhm.
and it's not going to change with the status quo, with the way things are right now. So we have not only evolved into what started as a storytelling platform, but now we're raising voices around the world in a lot of different ways. But we've got a social justice arm. We've got partners that we work with where we create networks. So women in any kind of abuse situation can get help. We publish books. We have healthcare now. We have SheisMe Health, which is a women's healthcare clinic. So we've expanded and grown in so many different ways. So when we see now a need to where we can call on the women that in our network around the world, how can we make this happen? And in fact, yesterday had a conversation with women because we've been talking about how women-owned businesses, well, funding that comes from investors, right? 90% of all funding goes to male-owned businesses. 90%. So women are out here just trying to make it work, just trying to support themselves, and so if we have a great idea, whether it's technology or whatever, the chances of us getting funding, standing up on that stage and pitching to get an investor is very small. So we had a conversation yesterday with some investors and some other like human rights people and all this other stuff. How can we change that system? How can we change it or build a different system for women so that women get funded and women thrive and women can have their own businesses and be financially independent and so on and so forth? Like, because it's not working, and we it's not they're not allowing us to work within that system, the existing systems. So we have to go over here and build our own. We have to do something about it. And that's what we're doing at She Is Me.
And you've already touched upon the events that you're going to have a workshop and 75 speakers. That's
Mhm.
amazing. Real quick, when was the first conference and how many speakers did you have then?
The first conference is 2021, and we had 28 speakers, I think. Yeah, I think we had 28 speakers. And we've grown. Last year we had 50, this year we have 75. So we've grown. It probably won't get any bigger than this for the virtual conference, but we do have other events. We have summits every month, which are specific themed. So there'll be a health summit. There'll be women in the military summit. There'll be LGBTQ
You-
plus event. Um, we have a board of directors. We have a trans woman on our board of directors. We represent all women. everywhere. And like I said, we have summits every month, and those are pre-recorded events that you can go in and you can watch their presentations. Um, we have next May, we have an actual cruise that goes from Los Angeles to Vancouver. It's a leadership cruise on Princess Cruises. And that is She Is Me at Sea. And then we also are launching She Is Me Australia in March. And so we'll be in Melbourne in March for a She Is Me Speaks event, which is similar to TEDx, where you get to stand up on stage, but we also have workshops and we also have vendors. So we try and bring in as many women as possible to give to write, help lift up as many women as possible in one event. And then we have a retreat that's happening at a national park in New South Wales uh, in April in Australia. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, sounds like you've been very busy, which is great because we need to have action, events
Thanks.
and where people can connect. And it's not just connecting; it's also bringing awareness, informing, handing over the tools that you've learned, and passing it on, and also bringing awareness. So maybe because you also mentioned perpetrators who just get away with anger management.
Yeah.
That's not enough. There needs to be something more done, like, I don't know, consequences. So,
Consequences. Yeah, consequences for just about anything, and it could be even financial abuse. Like there should be consequences if you're married to someone and they're withholding funds, or they give you an allowance. Like there are so many women I've talked to where their husband hasn't let them work. They get an allowance. They can't ask for any more money. Why can't you feed the family with that $100 a week I gave you? I mean, there need to be laws made around this that you cannot withhold funds. Like that is abuse. That is, you could be starving your kids, right? Because you're not giving the family enough money because you're controlling them. Yeah, there's a lot of things that need to change. We obviously can't do it all at the same time, and but Australia just put a law in the books in New South Wales. I just read it yesterday about consequences for domestic violence, mandatory jail time.
well, thank you for sharing, for shedding light on this real dark part of culture or of the human life, the human
Mhm.
experience, where this is still happening all over the globe. But it sounds like you are making time, and you're very passionate to make a change. And you also have a podcast. The name of the podcast is Voices Carry. Can you tell us a bit about how that's going?
Yeah, so I started it a while ago, and I'd recorded some episodes on my own, and I had some guests and stuff. And then I was in Canada at an event, and I saw a friend of mine that I hadn't seen in a while, and we were with our husbands, and we were just talking. We were talking politics and some other things, and my husband said, "You should have Kimberly. You guys should do a podcast." And I said, "Well, I already have a podcast. Kimberly, do the podcast with me." So now Kimberly does the podcast with me, and we sometimes just talk amongst ourselves, and then we also have guests. So as long as you go to the application page on the website, you can apply to be on any outlet that we have, whether it's a summit or the conference or a live event in any place or the podcast or anything. We have so many things going on, so many ways for you to join us and use your voice. So yeah, just
And,
check that out.
and I forgot to ask, what is the website?
SheisMeGlobal.com.
She's Me Global. So those who are in the audience, if you're
Mm-hmm.
interested, go to sheismeglobal.com.
Yep.
And I'm saving the best for last. You also have a book that just came out.
I
Please tell
It
us.
just came in the mail today, which is amazing, right? It just came out. This is an anthology that I was a part of. And it just so happened that I was asked to be a part of this anthology and tell my story at the same time that SheisMe is actually publishing anthologies. So we have a publishing arm now that you can write your story and be part of a book that gets published. And we have next year, I'll just talk about this really quick. We have She Builds, which has to do with building a business, or building some, like tell us a story of how you built something, built this new life, or built a business, or, whatever it is. So She Builds, She Heals. If you're a healer, you can tell your story in this book. You can, because a lot of people don't want to be up on stage and they don't want to be in front of the camera, but they still have a story to tell and they love to write and they want their story out there. So we thought this only makes sense to expand in this way. So She Heals is for healers. Then we have She Rages. That's going to be in March. And that's really, what are you mad about and how are you going to solve it? Like, what is making you, furious? And stories of like how you've burned something down and rebuilt it. I mean, there's so many of those. And then the fourth one is She Creates. So this is for women who live creative lives, women who are artists, musicians, people who have made their living being creative, because a lot of times we don't know how do I do that? We've got I've got a couple of women who won Grammys and who, started in Nashville and all these other things. So how did they do it? How did they get where they are? We want to hear their stories. We want to hear what that process was. So that's She Creates. And then we have a special edition in February that's coming out, Black Women's Voices. And so we really want, contributors for that edition. All of those, it's not too late. You can still submit everything that you need to. We also have a magazine, and that magazine you can blog for, you can contribute in a lot of different ways. There's, a health portion, there's editorials, there's creative, there's travel, there's all kinds of stuff that you can contribute to that in by writing, by putting your opinion out there, by putting your knowledge or expertise out there. All of these vehicles are to lift you up, to lift your voice, to lift your spirits, to lift your energy, to lift you up, so that, one thing I realized, something that I didn't have growing up, especially after my grandmother died, was that mentor, that person that I could go to and ask for advice and hold me up. And with women, there's such a we've been taught to compete with each other, right? We've been taught to not hold each other up. Because if you're doing something better than I am, I should be envious or jealous of you, and then I don't want to be around you. And it's just weird thing that we're taught, and I don't know why. Other than when we are in competition with each other and we aren't holding each other up, we're easier to manipulate. We're easier to control, right? So when we all stick together, like, watch out, right? Because we're powerful. And so when you look at it from that lens, it's almost as though like it's on purpose, right? Could be. But anyway, this book just came in the mail, Transforming Pain into Purpose. And this is an anthology of women telling their stories of, what happened to them. So if you want a different version, my chapter is chapter 19 in here, and it talks about, it's called a reclamation, and it's really talks about survival and growing up in violence and alcoholism, and how I got through it all and survived, and really got to where I'm at today. So yeah, so there's a lot going on.
Yes. So thank you for doing what you do and bringing awareness and also bringing your truth, which leads me
Mm.
to my final question.
Sure.
And this is the question that I ask all of my guests, and that is, Lisa, what is your truth that heals?
My truth that heals is to spend every day in relentless pursuit of joy. That's it. No, that's
Okay.
it. Relentless pursuit of joy. Honestly, that is you know, the highest vibration you can get. And even if it's just turn on the TV and watch your favorite movie again because you just can't do anything else. It's as easy as that to raise your vibration and to feel better. And that's all any of us want is to feel better, right? Every decision that we make every single day is what's going to feel better. And I'm going to make you think about this now. Think about no matter what it is you do, what shirt am I going to wear? What am I going to have for dinner? What car am I going to buy? Every single decision that you make is about how it's going to make you feel, right? So if we just paid attention to that and we only chose things that brought us joy, and we only chose those, and we actually said no to the things that don't bring us joy, and that was our truth, and we actually stood in that every single day, like the world would be so much better, right? We'd all be so much happier. But what happens is we are afraid to say no. We're afraid to use our voice. We're afraid to want something. We're afraid to be judged or shamed by our choices. But you got to stop thinking about what everybody else thinks about you
Well,
and what they want. Yeah.
thank you so much, Lisa,
You're
for
welcome, Ryan.
sharing all the work that you do and for sharing your truth that heals. And for those in the audience, please go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel, give a like to this episode, comment so that it can also get in the algorithm, and please share it so that other people may discover the truth that heals presented by our guest today, Lisa Jimenez. And Lisa, thank you again. Thank you so much for sharing your truth that heals on my humble podcast, the Truth That Heals podcast.
Thank you.